Hi guys, this is Noah Figueroa with Paragon Bridgeworks, and in this video I want to talk about decking and what kind of weight capacity can the decks hold. So whenever we get this question regularly is how much weight can our bridges hold? Obviously we're converting railroad flat cars into bridges, so we're working with whatever we get in. There are two basic choices or types of decks we get in, either steel or wood. Um, and the question about how much weight can the deck hold, it's two parts. It's not only how much the model here I'm showing you is a 90-foot long rail car. It's not just a matter of how much can the bridge hold if we put the abutments way out here. Not only how much can the superstructure hold, but how much can the actual deck itself support that's going to allow it to transfer the weight. And if it's a steel deck, then it's easy. It can handle whatever. Doesn't matter. If you want 10,000 pounds, 20,000 pounds, 80,000 pounds, we've designed all the way up to over 200,000 pounds. On a solid steel deck, you're good to go. It doesn't really matter. We don't need to do anything with the deck itself. Now we may need to do something with the superstructure. Sometimes we need to stiffen it up if our abutments are further out, but that's the superstructure that we're concerned about, not necessarily the deck. When it comes to the deck, the 90-footers typically come with a half-inch steel deck. They are painted. Usually the paint is in okay at best condition. The steel is in good condition, but the deck, the paint, sometimes you may want to sandblast it and paint it. You can put an anti-slip coating on there, but for the most part, people just use them just the way they come. All right, so steel deck, easy. We can do just about whatever you need and get that up and running at no additional cost. Now, when it comes to the 40-footers, let me get that model open real quick. All right, so this is a 40-footer I was working on, so it's already it has some extra parts and pieces we'll talk about in a little bit. Now the 40-footers generally come with a wooden deck. Okay, so they're about 2 foot tall, 40 foot long, 8 foot wide, and the deck typically sets inside. It's kind of nested inside. Let me get a section cut for you real quick. We'll cut this out. Ignore all the other parts I'm going to bring over here in a few minutes. But you can see on a 90-footer, the wooden deck nests right up underneath the I-beams on the side sail. These are called the side sail over here. And these are typically like a 2x material. And while they technically can hold the weight, it's not recommended that you use that for the primary driving surface because it doesn't take much to break wood. Now, if you had like a beautiful rubber tire that didn't have any rocks on it, and it was it's ideal conditions, we typically don't have a problem with semi trucks being able to cross a bridge and hold 80,000 pounds, or we never designed over 100,000 pounds with a wooden deck the way it is. Typically, we want a secondary layer of wood. So let me delete this over here. So using the primary deck as a finished driving surface is not a good idea. Could you? Yeah. Would it support the weight? You're gonna have problems down the road, because once you get rocks in the tires of a vehicle and it starts cracking this wood, and those vehicles start pushing the weight and all those rocks down inside that wood is not going to hold up like steel is. So we always recommend that you put a secondary layer of wood over the existing layer, and that's what this is over here. So let me bring that in. I think that's 20 feet. Okay, so now we want a secondary layer of wood right over the top, and you're just going to screw wood to wood. Ignore these little pink brackets, pink and purple. Those are our bearing kits. There are different videos about that. So whenever we do this, we're just applying wood to wood. Pretty simple. And this is the thickness of the wood is going to be determined by the kind of weight capacity that you want. Generally, if you want HS20, 72,000 pounds or greater, you want this to be 3-inch nominal, about 2.5-inch actual. If you're looking for something lighter than that, then we can get away with it with a thinner board. Now, whenever we do this, we're putting 2 of these decks side by side. If this is a vehicular bridge, if this is a pedestrian bridge, it's kind of a different conversation. You still want a secondary layer of wood, but then you can use like a 2x. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's just more protecting the primary layer. So we have the primary layer that I showed you earlier, and then we have the secondary layer that I'm showing you right now. The type of wood that we generally want to use is a Douglas fir. Okay, you could also use a southern yellow pine depending on what part of the country you're at, but you want a nice structural piece of wood. You do want it pressure treated. Okay, so whenever you put the two decks side by side, this is kind of what it looks like. You will want to put a little piece of steel or wood to cover that seam up. But this is what you're going to want if you want it. If you want a 40-footer and you plan on having vehicular traffic on there regularly. Now let me bring down this semi truck. So if you put the wood on there, what happened? Move down 20 feet. 20 feet. Let me find out what's wrong with my model real quick. Oh, that's what I did. I did 20 inches. All right, sorry about that. Little technical difficulties here. So whenever we're doing the wooden deck, this is going to be your bridge, right? And you're going to have these semi trucks driving over the bridge year after year, and this will work just fine. But the thing that we see when we do, because we do routine bridge inspections, if this semi truck or any vehicle is driving back and forth on this bridge deck, after years and years of that vehicle going across, eventually that section of the wood that the tires are driving across they're just going to start wearing out, right? So and this wood is not cheap. Labor materials for that wooden deck is not cheap. And if you look at the wood, whenever we see the wood wear patterns, the wood over here is in great shape. The wood in the middle is in great shape, and also over here it's in great shape. The only place where we see wear at, which is going to cause the whole deck to need to be replaced, is right where the tires are at. So what we do now, what we suggest, is you add a third layer of wood. I think that's going to be 40 feet. Yep, 40 feet, perfect. You add a third layer of wood right where those tires are at. These are called lane runners. Okay, these are beautiful. They do add some expense. These are typically, depending on your weight capacity, we generally, for HS20 or any kind of heavy vehicular traffic, we're using a nominal 3x, and we love using the 3x12s, 12 inches wide, just because it's just less labor to put it together, right? We want to get in and out of there as quickly as possible. All right, so and these just screw wood to wood, right? So you're screwing this wood to that wood. This is the third layer of wood. So in 10 years from now, whenever the lane runners start wearing out, you're not replacing the entire deck. You're just replacing these few lane runners. That's a third layer of wood. The third layer is not for increased vehicular capacity. The third layer is just for just a wear layer that's going to save you money down the line. The second layer is more of a structural capacity. It's going to distribute the weight over the bridge and protect the primary layer better. Okay. So third layer, second layer, and then your primary layer for the wooden deck. And if we do this, we can certainly do HS20. We can do 80,000 pounds, 100,000 pounds. Now, sometimes we do have clients that want like 200,000 pound vehicles on these wooden decks. So let me kind of show you some. I shot a video. Let me pull it up on the heavy duty deck that we can build. All right, so this is a video. I just went out to to our yard and shot some video of some of the decks in our yard. This blue deck is a 20-foot deck that we just use around our yard just to move equipment around and use as a platform. So you can see here the decks are going lengthwise and they're flush with the top of this I-beam. Okay, and you could use this. It's just not a good idea to use it long term. You can see the cross members underneath here where all these little screw holes or screw heads are at. So you got plenty of cross members, but if you ruin that deck, you're going to be having a really tough time replacing that wood deck. We've had to do it, and it is a chore. You want to protect that primary deck, unless you don't care and you want to ruin the bridge after a couple of years. That's fine too. So this is what the 20-footer looks like. This is another 40-footer that we use in our yard, just another work area we have. You can see it's the same thing. It's oops, I went too far. You see the lengthwise deck boards there and some cross members underneath. This is 2 foot tall. The other one was only 1 foot tall. 20 footers are 1 foot tall. 40 footers are 2 foot tall. And this is what the primary deck looks like. We've been using this as a work platform for probably, man, at least 10 years. And we're not putting a lot of weight on there, but it works just fine for us. All right, let's play the video some more. This next video is, oh, perfect. Okay, so now if this is a 40-foot deck, if you want this thing to hold, a 40-footer to hold over 100,000, 150,000 pounds, and you want it to be really heavy duty, this is what we build here. So we take a 40-footer. This still has a wooden deck underneath it, but we supplement it with these angle irons. These are 6 by 6 by ½ thick angle iron. This is actually 2 decks right here. When the other one is back over here, they'll get butted up just like that other video I showed you. So there'll be a guardrail on both sides with decking continuous 16-foot wide bridge deck. So this is what it looks like. These angle iron, ½ inch thick. And that's what's going to distribute the weight from that semi-truck tire over. Actually, I think this one we designed for super heavy equipment, maybe even excavators. And you wouldn't drive over this bridge just the way it is. Once it's installed, you'll fill this up with gravel, with free draining gravel. So it'll look like a gravel roadway, but it'll have these angle iron decking up underneath, right? So this is a very heavy duty. If you wanted a 40-footer with really heavy duty weight capacity, this is what we're looking at. Of course, we do have the guardrails mounted to this. If you look up underneath, you'll see that we still have the original wood deck members there, right? So there's the original wood deck, and we have the angle irons going perpendicular to the original wood deck. Okay, so that's what that looks like. All those pretty cross members, a whole bunch of cross members all the way down, and lots of angle iron all the way down, right? So it's a very heavy deck. Now this is a picture or video of a typical a 90-foot. You can see this is a ½ inch steel deck, and it's beautiful just the way it is. You don't need to do anything, right? It's just a nice solid steel deck. We love 90-footers. If we can, we'll try to use a 90-footer for everything because it's all steel. We don't need to do anything with the deck. Okay, I don't know what else I'm filming here. Just 290 side by side. Right, that's it. Okay, now I want to talk about concrete. Some people want a concrete deck, either over the 40-footers or over a 90-footer, and while that's possible, it is very difficult and it's going to be pretty expensive. I'm going to just go back to the 90-footer. We generally, whenever we've put concrete on a deck, it's usually a 90-footer. So in order to put concrete on this, you just can't start pouring concrete because we need the concrete that's sitting up here. It's going to be at least 6 inches of concrete. We need that to be in composite or kind of locked into the bridge deck, not just be sitting on top. We have seen people put concrete directly on top of this bridge, just the way it is. They'll put like they'll put angle iron or put something to hold the concrete, on, like a lip all the way around, and they'll pour concrete. And that is a really that's a not a good idea. Let's talk about weights for a minute. So if we take a 90-foot long bridge deck, 90 foot times 9 foot wide, it's 810 square feet. Concrete, just 6 inches of concrete, just sitting on top of that deck, that's going to add to about 75 pounds per square foot. You're adding about 61,000 pounds of weight to that bridge. So if that reduces the weight capacity, and so instead of doing 80,000 pounds, you're adding 62 or 61,000 pounds of weight to that bridge deck, right? So the wet concrete, if it's not composite, if it's not locked into the deck, it acts as just another dead weight on top of the bridge, right? So if you wanted to make the bridge stronger, so if we can add Nelson studs. You probably don't know what Nelson studs are. Let me find a picture of Nelson studs. Right, I just kind of Googled Nelson studs, and this is what it looks like. So we have to weld these bolts that look like bolts, are about 3/4 inch diameter. We have to take those and we have to weld a whole bunch of them, several lines, all the way down. To that adds thousands of dollars just in welding. And then we have to add rebar, so the rebar gets tied to the Nelson studs, and then you can pour the concrete deck. And then if you do it that way, then the concrete deck becomes a composite member of the bridge, which makes the bridge stronger, strong enough, just strong enough to offset the dead weight of the concrete. Okay, so we can do concrete, but on a steel deck, it's a lot of work. Now, if we're talking about a 40-foot deck, let me go back to that model of a 40-foot deck here. On a 40-foot deck, if you wanted to do concrete, we have to take all the wood off, including the primary layer of wood, and put a steel pan on there. The pan doesn't have to be very big. It can be kind of thin gauge material, 1/8 inch, 16 inch, just holding the weight of the wet concrete until it dries. But even then, we're removing all the wood deck. We're putting a steel pan on there. We're adding a bunch of Nelson studs, and then we're adding rebar cage. And usually we don't do that in our yard. That adds way too much weight to transport it and to set it. So we'll whenever we ship these out, the few times that we have done a concrete deck or prepped the bridge for a concrete deck, we'll add the Nelson studs, and then we'll ship the bridge off. And then after installation, you'll pour the concrete. Otherwise, it just adds way too much weight. It makes a crane way bigger. It makes installation much more difficult. So we've done 90-foot bridges with concrete prep for a concrete deck. 40-footers, I've been doing this for 20-something, maybe 25 years, and I think I've only done it maybe 2 or 3 times. It's just very labor intensive, and every time we do it, I regret doing it because it's a lot of work. On the 90-footers, it's not difficult. It's just very time consuming. On the 40-footer, it's time consuming and difficult. So you'd be hard pressed to get us to want to prep a 40-foot bridge for concrete. We'll do it on a 90-footer. You're not going to like the price, but we can do it on a 90-footer if you really want concrete. Otherwise, just leave the steel the way it is or the wood the way it is. Okay, hopefully this has addressed all your deck questions. If you have any more questions about decking capacities, let us know. If you want prices for the wood, now like with a wood deck, we can just sell you the deck itself, and you can install the wood deck yourself, or you can buy the wood deck yourself. If you purchase the engineering from us, it'll tell you exactly what kind of wood deck it needs to have, what the screw pattern needs to be, what kind of screws you need to secure it. So when it comes to the wood deck, we can install the secondary layer of wood for you and ship it off ready to go. We can even install the lane runners for you. But if you're looking at saving some cost, we can just sell you just a bridge deck with a primary layer, and once you get it, you can install your own secondary layer and third layer if you want. Right? That's totally up to you. Wood's getting expensive. Everything is getting expensive nowadays. Labor is getting expensive. Materials are getting expensive. So if you're looking at saving some money and installing the wood deck yourself, we'll be happy to help you. There's even some times where the prices that we get for wood, because we buy a fair amount of wood, is generally going to be better price than what you can get it for. So sometimes whenever we're selling the wooden deck bridges, we'll just sell you the wood. We'll when we ship the bridges out, we'll ship the bridges without the secondary layer on there. We'll just load a bunk of wood, a strap of wood on top of the bridge deck. Then after you get it and you install it, you can install your own wood planks. We're okay with that too. That way you get our purchasing power, and you also get the wood deck delivered. It's just not installed yet. So a lot of flexibility there. But 40 foot, generally, primary layer is not sufficient. You want to add a secondary layer, at the minimum secondary layer, and then we recommend a third layer for longevity. Okay, long video. Sorry it's so long. I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you very much.